Hello and welcome everyone to what is technically my second but essentially my first ever V8 Supercars race in iRacing. This was about preparation for the Bathurst 1000. Now that has been run and done on my channel. If you're an existing subscriber you will have most likely seen that I did that. It was a solo attempt and it actually went rather well, so I'm probably going to make a highlights video of that at some stage. If you are new to the channel, please consider hitting subscribe. But on to this actual race. This is the first one I did in preparation, and it's at Watkins Glen. The track temperature is very, very high, and this really was about learning the cars, which are extremely difficult to drive, but I'll get back to that in a second. So I had just done, as we go into turn one here, we'll just keep an eye out, there's a bit of a drama on the left-hand side, a couple of people go around, and I was able to sneak up the inside, so I've actually gained a few spots here on the opening lap, and you can see in the rearview mirror, it just kind of split the field up a little bit. Now, I did only qualify 14th, which probably wasn't ideal. I didn't do the best qualifying session, but my out-and-out pace on a single lap probably wasn't that great. However, I'd done a bit of practice. I felt relatively comfortable to do competitive race times consistently. So I kind of figured at this stage of the race, it's about keeping up with the pack, letting the tyres get warm, and seeing if I can go with them, and hopefully work my way through to a top 10. I really did genuinely feel like a top 10 was a possibility for this race. So getting back to the cars themselves, if you haven't driven the supercars in iRacing, personally I find them to be the most difficult car to drive in the game. Now I know other people might disagree with that. Some people struggle with the prototypes. I actually find them really good, really fun to drive. The Formula 3s I've been driving, also quite challenging in certain areas, but once you sort of get your head around the aero and how you're going to get that grip out of the car, they're actually not so bad. These supercars, they are big horsepower cars. They have minimal aero. I mean, I think we're talking 600, 650 horsepower, something like that. I don't have the figures in front of me, so you'll have to give me a bit of leeway on my stats and statistics here. But they've got about 650 horsepower. They don't have massive tyres on them. The back tyres are relatively narrow considering the horsepower they're putting out, and despite the massive wangs they've got on the back, they actually don't have an overly robust aero package. They only produce really a couple of hundred kilos, 500-600 kilos of downforce, something like that. They're a big heavy car. They're something like 1.4, 1.5 tonne, so that's a lot to muscle around a track, especially one that's 40 degrees when you're not used to the car. And what it means is that weight and the lack of aero does end up giving you quite a bit of understeer. So the front end is accurate to a point, but if you push too hard, you will absolutely understeer. Obviously, oversteer is a very real thing, so a lot of driving the supercars is about throttle control. And if you actually look down the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you can see my throttle inputs there. And what you'll see is that I'm quite often not on full throttle. Coming out of the corner, really learning these cars and being able to do these cars is a balance of jumping on the brakes. No ABS in these cars. So again, you'll see as I brake, even into the difficult and hard braking zones, I actually don't really use 100% brake at any point. A sort of 50 to 60% brake is about where it's at. If you go over that, you will just lock a tyre, lock a wheel up. The throttle's a little bit similar, so as you come out of the corner, you really just ease the throttle on. It's not until you're in a really sort of straight line, or you've at least opened the steering wheel a lot, that you can actually get on 100% throttle. So it's a real balancing act, and this was a really tough race. This track itself is quite good. I like Watkins Glen. I've certainly got nothing against that. But with such a high-powered car, or I guess a low-grip car is really what I'm saying, they are kind of challenging to drive. Now, you can see off the line, I actually got a relatively good start. I grabbed a few spots, there's a bit of an incident. I'm keeping up with the guys in front. In fact, I'd argue that whilst these two are scrapping, I probably did have a little bit of extra pace. I have found myself in the top 10. I am currently 9th. So yeah, I just wanted to get into a rhythm. Now, there's a lot of things when you do a race for the first time. Obviously, getting off the line was something I had to focus on because they can be difficult to get off the line. It's a standing start in supercars races. It's not typically a rolling start, certainly not from what I've experienced. Getting them off the line is tough, but it actually takes a lap or two to get the tyres up to temperature, and whilst those tyres are cold, the car is, as you would imagine, very, very slippery to drive. Now, in real life, they don't have tyre warmers. iRacing typically does reflect real life. So you start off with cold tyres. You've actually got to bring them up to temperature by driving. And that means for the first couple of laps, you just have to ease your way in. Fortune doesn't really favour the brave in supercars, at least when you're a rookie like me. I guess once you know what you're doing and you've gotten used to the car, you can be a little bit more risky on the first couple of laps. But I'm easing my way into it nicely now, a couple of laps in, and a huge dive bomb from old mate behind. To be fair, he'd been sitting behind me for a while, he'd been wanting to tee that up. And I actually did just back off the throttle, open the steering wheel a little bit, let him shoot up the inside because it was about finishing. These races are very much about attrition. Sure, once you get up into your higher skill level and your higher, I rating brackets, then it's probably less about attrition, it's more about actual pace. But down here where I am, and I've only got about 1900 I rating as I enter this race, so that might give you an idea of sort of who I'm up against here. Similarly skilled people. So yeah, there's a couple of other rookies. There's some people that have been in the championship a long time. I heard some people on the grid asking about pit stops, when to take them, and if you need to refuel and all that sort of thing. So there was definitely a couple of newbies in the field like myself, and then there was a couple of old hats that were able to answer questions up the front. I did actually find that comparatively to GT3 and GTE racing series, that this was quite the community, I guess, in the supercars has been quite receptive. People are understanding, they get that these cars are tough to drive, and I don't know, just kind of, most of the lobbies I've been in have just felt a lot friendlier, a lot nicer, and the driving itself is a little bit cleaner, and I think that's because you can't get away with as much. If you make a stupid manoeuvre, there is every chance, not only will you take out your competitor, you're actually going to take out yourself as well. So it's just not worth trying these things. At this stage of the race, you can see I'm just maybe struggling a little bit to keep the back of the pack, but I'm there or thereabouts. And it's only lap 5, it's going to be a long race, and I have to think about the overall sort of progress. I'm relatively happy, I'm just starting to settle into a rhythm, but having dropped off the back of the guy in front, the bloke behind me has now been catching up, but I would say he's quite a long way back. I see him looking to the right hand side. He's not going to go for a dive, is he? I get on the brakes, he's a little bit later, and then at the last minute he decides to shove his nose in there anyway, and unfortunately makes a little bit of contact, and that really does ruin my hopes at this point. It was tough enough to keep with the pack I was, but having lost a whole bunch of spots now, and also I had a few off tracks there. Obviously you get a 4 times free contact, which I'll let you guys decide if that's fair or not when you get punted. But yeah, I don't know, it was a really confusing situation there because it looked like he was looking, and I kind of left the door open slightly in case he went the dive bomb. Then he really rolled out of it, and I'm actually going to lose another spot here. He just got a much better run, which you'd expect. I was sideways at turn 1. So I sort of let him through. There's no point fighting, but I have dropped right down the order now, around about 17th. So yeah, from here on out, it's going to be a bit of a comeback. We've already lost a few people from the race. I think at this point I'm about 3rd last. There might be a couple of people sitting in the pits, but yeah, it was really unfortunate. I thought I was going quite well. This bloke's a little bit all over the place. He's just gone sideways in the corner. You can see he's twitchy everywhere. He ruined his own run out of there, so I actually thought, well, I may as well just go for it now. And I did manage to get him around the outside. My pace was compromised. If you sort of fall off that bit of concrete there, you do run wide, but chaos starts to ensue. I've got taken out. There's 2 people just on the side of the road. They've had an incident, so I don't know what it is about this lap, but all of a sudden things started to kick off, and he went back up the inside, so I'm now scrapping with this bloke, and as you can see, he just got on the throttle way too hard to try and get through on me and spat it out. So all of a sudden a fairly boring race and a few laps of really not doing much, just sitting there in a rhythm, has ended up getting rather exciting rather quickly. But the good news is I did have a bit of pace over my rivals. You can see these guys up ahead fighting. That always helps me. A little bit of contact between the two of them. But, I guess my whole frame of mind changed at this point, whereas when I was 9th, I was lapping around just trying to keep it clean and being in the pack. But now when you're so far back, he runs it very wide there, just keeps it off the wall. And you can see I have a huge amount of extra momentum coming on the front straight. In fact, I nearly ran into the back of him. But yeah, my mindset has changed at this point. I'm like, right, I really need to knuckle down and I need to push on if I want to get any hope. And it's actually, honestly, it's not going too bad. I seem to be holding a better pace than most of these people. As you can see, mistakes galore. All of a sudden, people just running wide, getting a lot of oversteer and understeer. So things were starting to look up, and I wanted to keep punching on. I'm starting to pressure this guy. I'm in his slipstream now, but you can see the slipstream's not that powerful. I don't think I really picked up any major damage from that incident. A bit of damage on the rear right quarter panel, but that's about it. Nothing that's going to affect my pace. I do sort of think that typically when you get your VRS setups, the Commodores seem to have a little bit more aero dialed in, because typically what I find, if I don't modify, you can see another lock up and he's run wide. So I'm just going to take that spot back as well. My climb back through the field's actually not going too bad, to be honest. This race is kind of starting to get exciting, and the guy in front has run wide again. So very early in the race, I think people are already starting to struggle with tyres, and as I skip ahead, you can see I've caught right up to the back of him. I'm starting to think about my pit stops. I think I had unchecked all of my tyres, so at this point, down the bottom right-hand corner, you can see I've only got one ticked on to replace. I think I need to go through and tick them all back on, because I'd unchecked them thinking I was going to try and make it to the end without tyres. But unlike GT3 and GTE, you don't have to take fuel and tyres at separate times. They do it all in one hit, as per the Real Supercars Championship. And I guess I just forgot that, being an iRacing and obviously doing a lot of GT3. This was just after the 6 hours of the Glen, or whatever that endurance race was. So I really had GT3 in the mind. I'd unchecked them, but I hadn't mapped all the right buttons on the wheel, so I had to use the mouse on straights to click the tyres on. But I'm really starting to put some pressure on this guy now. My position is starting to rise, so things are starting to look good again. I was getting a bit of hope back. A first sort of, section of the race was good, and then I got taken out, but I am starting to feed my way back through, and he makes another mistake wide on the grass. Concerned about the re-entry. He's still up the inside. I have to hold a tight line here around the outside, but again, I'm able to get on that power, and it's okay. So lots of spice happening. You can see me now. I'm actually unchecking the tyres, so maybe at this point I hadn't yet figured out that you need to put the tyres on, and actually doing that, mucking around with the mouse and unchecking that, just distracted me long enough to miss my braking marker deep at turn 1 again, and I've allowed that Mustang back through. So all that hard work I did to catch up and overtake him, I do now have to go and do again. But I suppose to find an upside amongst it all, it is nice to have a battle. Sometimes you get stuck in these races, lapping around by yourself, doing absolutely nothing. At least by letting him back through, I have something to focus on and someone to try and get past again. I definitely have the pace over this guy. You can see already, just through certain sectors in this track, I am a little bit quicker than him. He runs wide again. I think he's struggling. He's well wide there, actually. I think he might have nicked a bit of grass. So I thought about going down the outside. This is going to be a really tough manoeuvre. There's not a lot of grip out there. I actually rolled off, cut in tight, and then tried to punch it out, but I just didn't quite have the grunt. I think the Mustangs just seem to have a little bit more speed in them than the Commodore. Now, I'm sure the cars are identical, but possibly it's just the setups that we were using. You can see him getting a little bit squirmish on the way out. So this battle does continue as I try and stick my nose up the inside. I really wanted to go the dive here, and I've done it. I just waited until I saw his brake light come on, and I jumped on it. I've run a bit wide, which gives him the chance to go back up the inside, but of course the advantage is here that would put him to the outside of the track for the following turn. I've got the inside, and I have managed to solidify that position, which is good. It's good to have fun, because there's not a lot of other cars around us at the moment, but I am starting to gain a few positions just with pit stops. So people are already diving in the pits. I'm thinking about it. The tyres are starting to get a little bit second-hand at this point. And in fact, you can see behind me there, he actually did dive in the pits. He'd had enough of those tyres. So I'm, again, very much learning, but I'm going to fast forward here a little bit later. You can see I'm up to 7th, but again, that's due to pit stops. Now, something very interesting does happen here. I'm so used to GT3s and GTEs, I just drifted too far to the left and clipped the grass. Of course, this car's a right-hand drive, as they are in Australia, and I should be more than used to it, but I have to tell you, sometimes when you sim race in left-hand drive cars so regularly, you can see here as we go overhead, as I drift into the braking zone, I only slightly just clipped it. It was enough to unsettle the car into the wall, up on the side, an odd crash, probably pretty lucky, to be honest. I didn't go over. But it did give me a meatball, so I popped into the pits, did the minimum amount of required repairs, and I guess I just at this point wanted to finish the race. It's a real shame. I was doing fairly well, and I genuinely believe I had pace for a top 10 here. That's put me well down the order. So as we fast forward on, this is the final lap of the race. I'm a long way down, actually in 23rd position, but someone sitting in the pits as I come across the line, so I snaveled back 22nd. A real shame to have my first real supercars race end in that way. So I decided to come back and have another round. My qualifying went a hell of a lot better this time. I've actually managed to slot it in 3rd position, and as the lights go out, another decent start. Actually relatively happy with that. I wasn't confident. The first start was average. This one I actually thought was really, really good, but I've got to survive it. Take the inside line there. You hung out to dry a little bit if you're in P2 on the grid. So we side by side, we did get the better drive, so I'm just going to tuck in behind him there. It's probably the safest thing to do, but you know, 3rd position, things are actually looking pretty good so far. And I wanted some redemption. You know, race 1 was, yeah, there's a yellow flag there, by the way, so more incidents behind me, but I didn't manage to capture them. This guy had a really good run on me, but he decided not to go the dive, and an incident here. That was, yeah, I don't know if the Mustang kind of just didn't allow him enough space, but I didn't really care too much because I've managed to sneak up the inside into P2. And now I just wanted to try and follow this car. Look, ultimately this Mustang did have a bit more pace than I did. So whilst I tried as hard as I possibly could to keep up, I was struggling a little bit. And the man that is now in 3rd position probably also had the pace over me as well, which is fine. You know what? I don't care. I'm fighting for 2nd currently. Yep, sure, I'm not going to quite keep up with the leader, but you got to be in it to win it. And yeah, see how we go. I got very, very sideways there on the exit of that turn. A huge amount of oversteer. Again, maybe just pressured a little bit from the fella behind. He's up the inside of me now, so I am going to brake as late as I can, make his job as hard as I can, but ultimately I am going to have to tuck back in behind him. And from this point on, though, unfortunately, not a great deal happened. I couldn't keep up with the 2 in front of me. And I did have a bit of a gap over the guy behind me, so I've fast forwarded quite a long way into the race. Actually, this is my box lap. This is where I came in to get some fresh tyres and fuel. Now, something interesting did happen. I don't really understand how I was stationary for so long. Obviously, the guy behind me did something trickier. Maybe didn't take as much fuel or tyres, or was better on fuel. Either way, unfortunately, I came out of the pits comfortably in 4th place, so I didn't take any repairs. I don't know what happened. It's all part of the learning experience. Nonetheless, it did go back to 4th. That is the end of the race. Not much exciting happened, but a nice little recovery. 4th is a good spot, considering it was, well, this is now really my 2nd Supercars race. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to hit like, subscribe for more, and I look forward to talking to you in the next one. But for now, it's goodbye.